fine, kind of prepared for that. All right, so kind of expect it. So, just my glasses. So I don't think this is a message for anybody particularly today. I think it could be in general for a lot of people, but this particular passage is about one person in particular. And the Bible chapter we're turning to is going to be Acts chapter 9. Now, it's about Saul. Now, most of you listening won't even have heard anything about this. There'll be a few people that it will speak to, all right, and a lot of people that it won't. So all of my messages are biblically based, but I tend to use the Bible as a living representative of our lives, all right? So there was this man, I'll tell you the story from here, Saul. His name was Saul, and he had murdered a lot of disciples. Disciples and apostles are both the same thing, but apostles do miracles and disciples don't, but they're still followers of Christ. That's how I was explained to it when I was in the churches, all right? So he was out murdering, and going back a little bit before we go into the main verse, it says, and Saul was there giving approval to his death, and that was the apostles or disciple Stephen, who was being stoned to death, right? So he was there giving approval to his death, and he would breathe out these murderous threats against the disciples. I found another verse, but I can't find it now. So if I can find it a minute. Should have written it down. Never mind. But there is a verse in here, and it says that he was out destroying the church. The church is the people of God, all right? So this is how it goes. So Saul was on his way to Damascus, which is north, I think, of Israel. And it doesn't say if he's riding a horse, a donkey, a mule, or whatever. It just says that he was on his way to persecute and kill women and men and women that belong to the Way. So the Way is in capital W. So I think that's the name of what was the group of Christians at the time, now called Christians. Okay, so he was on his way to kill them. And as he came along the road, this light came from heaven. So he was on his way somewhere, and he got stopped by this light from heaven. And the light was Jesus Christ. And he said, the voice came from this light from heaven. It said, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And further on in the verse, it doesn't say it in this one, it says, why do you persecute me? And he says, you cannot kick against the goats. We're going to come back to that in a minute, okay? Which is really important, right? So here he is. He says he fell to the ground, and those around him that were travelling with him could see. They could hear, but they couldn't see, I think it was. Yes, they heard what was going on, but they didn't see the light or anything. But Saul was blinded by this light. I mean, you heard the song, don't you? Blinded by the light, ELO or whatever. Blinded by the light. And this is the second time that I've brought up being blinded, because the first time was Sodom and Gomorrah. If you remember, the men surrounded the city, this house, sorry, the two men were in, and God blinded all those men. Okay, so this is the man travelling. He's come off of his horse, donkey, or whatever. He's on the ground and he's blinded. All right. So now what's he going to do? Well, I'm going to put this to the crowd in a minute and turn this around to give you an example of how it fits, how it would be if you were in this situation. So there was another disciple called Ananias. You have to bear with me, okay? And God had said to him, there's going to be a man called Saul, and I want you to bring him into your house and pray for him, because his eyesight's going to be restored. And he's my chosen instrument. He's the chosen mouthpiece, the spokesman for us, for all of you. Can you imagine that? So right, here we are. Now this is the example. You are the crowd, right? And some murderer has murdered a few of you, right? They've murdered a few of you. Well, how would you feel immediately? Angry, sad, everything else. But suddenly one of your crowd is told that you've got to bring in this murderer. This man has murdered a few of you, right? So he's murdered a few of you, and you've got to take him in. And one of you is being told you've got to take him in. Can you imagine that? Taking in this murderer. And this, God's telling you, this murderer where someone's telling you is going to be your spokesperson. This is it. This is the person who's going to lead all of you and bring in lots more people into your crowd, into God's kingdom, into his disciples. Can you imagine how you would feel? Yeah? Would you honestly trust him? Because further on, it says they were when he spoke to the crowd in Damascus, they were still trying to kill him because they didn't believe that he had suddenly turned. This is somebody who's been called what I would call born again. This is what born again means. You've gone from one personality to another personality. So he was murdered them, all right? And now he's gone to a different personality. Born again. That's what the expression means, a born again Christian. You've left the old person behind and you have become this new person, which is called, let's get on to something else, sanctification. Sanctification is being cleansed. So you can't actually leave your real old person behind, can you? You've got to kind of start where you start at and try and change with the help of God. Okay? So this man has been taken in. Can you imagine it? Right? But the one thing he said to them is you cannot kick against the goads. And that means you cannot go against what God's got ordained for you. Now, this man was chosen by God. I mean, it goes on, doesn't it? The people know about the Apostle Paul and all the sufferings he went through and all the in prison and everything else, shipwreck and everything else. But God has chosen different people. All of you in the crowd, we've all been chosen, everyone, to do different things. Have you been chosen for a job recently? You know, God knows that. Have you been chosen to be best man at a wedding? Have you been chosen to be, I don't know, something important or manager of a team or something? We've all been chosen to do different things and we can't kick against the goads. This is what God's saying to us. You might not believe in God, but he knows you and me. And all our days are ordained for us. I'll find that for another talk, because that's another thing. But all our days are set out before us, and God knows how we're going to do what we're going to do every day of our lives, right? So people talk about free will. I think I've said this before. We've all got a free will, right? But God knows what we're going to do before we do it. So he knows what we're going to do because he's the Alpha and the Omega. But we got a free will to make our choice. So we make the choice of whether you, I don't know, go to a different job or whether you get in the car that day or whether you walk. Simple choices. But God knows those choices you're going to make. See? It's complicated, but it's quite straightforward. So I don't know who this is particularly for, but I know there's been one person in your crowd that's been chosen to do a specific job, and that's going to be big. That's going to be big, and that's going to be important as well. It's going to be important. There's something important to come out of that, like evidence from a murder. It's going to be something later on down the line that is particularly why God has chosen that person. And God has chosen that person for the observation skills, for the attention to detail, for the accuracy and knowledge. God knows what he's doing. So there's other people in the crowd that's going to be chosen to do things. I'm not necessarily going to know what they are, all right? But I'm just telling you, like Paul on this road to Damascus had the blinding light and God chose him. You know, he was on his way to do one thing and suddenly it's completely diverted to do something completely different. I would just say be confident to do it, really, again, all right? Because you have been chosen to do different things, we all have, and God knows all of our days of our lives and how we're going to deal with them. So just, you know, go out there and know that what you're doing, God knows what you're doing, and you've probably already been chosen. You're in that job, you're in that for a reason. And the other thing that God says, I'll find that verse as well, it's in Acts again. It says God knows the exact places that we should live, right? He does. It says that. I'll find it for another occasion. But he says that in him we move and have our being. You can find it if you tap it into Google. It says he knows the exact places that we should live, right? So I'm waiting on the Lord for that, for me, again. But he brings us different places for a reason, all right? So just go out and be encouraged, I'd say, today. because this is the words that God's given me to bring to you. All right, I think it applies to every one of us in a different way. All right, so it's Kim Seviour speaking from privacy of my own home, where it should be on my iPod, but it might not be, and maybe heard through a listening device. So yeah, I'll catch you later. See you out there. Okay, enjoy your day.